Hey guys, it's Landon. Um, the last video I discussed how or some of the potential topics that I might cover. And the one I said I was most likely to cover was stasis and stasis in the fossil record. That's one of my favorite topics. I've covered that before. So yeah, this is what this video is going to be about. I'm going to be discussing the prevalence of stasis in the fossil record. I have gone over it before in some debates and um, other videos that I've made, but this will be just more of an exclusive. This will deal with the topic more exclusively. So let me share my screen. I got a slideshow I prepared. Hold on one second. Okay. Okay. This is the prevalence of stasis in the fossil record. The picture on there is from a old Wendy's advertising campaign called "Where's the Beef?" and thought it would be funny to change it to "Where's the Change?" So basically that's what that is. I thought that was kind of funny. That would be a good picture to put in there for the intro. So yeah, let's get started. So what exactly is stasis? The Oxford bibliographies describe stasis as a relative lack of evolutionary change over a long period during the history of a species. So to put it simply in my words, stasis is when organisms don't change much over time, with only minor variations being observed over the millennia. In other words, it's the demonstrable, visible lack of evolution. While evolutionists tend to focus on famous examples of evolution and notable missing links, of course they're going to bring those up. It's expected. They conveniently ignore the prevalence of stasis in the fossil record. I would even go as far as to say stasis is the rule, not the exception. So I'm going to start with discussing Lynn Margulies and her views. I've mentioned her back last year. I mentioned her in my debate with Speed of Sound. I mentioned that when we were discussing evolution. I brought up her quote and was kind of accused of quote mining, but I know that she's not a creationist. I'm going to say that flat out. I know she's not a creationist. I know she was not an intelligent design proponent, but she has some valuable insight. So I am going to discuss her and bring up one of her quotes. But yeah, I believe I first mentioned her. Yeah, the first time I mentioned her, because I became aware of this quote, was actually when I was in college back in 2016. We had a community, or not a community, communication class where it's kind of like a public speech class, and we had to go over and have an argument, make a case for something, and I set my, trying to think of the exact title, my speech went over why evolution needs to be replaced with a more realistic theory. And yeah, that's the first time I brought her up. I've been bringing her up ever since. I think she's got some good quotes. But yeah, the late Lynn Margulies, she was a biologist who advocated for the symbiogenesis theory of evolution. To put it simply, it claims that symbiosis was a major driver of evolution, and that is responsible for the emergence of eukaryotic cells derived from prokaryotic life forms. I'm not going to go in too deep on that at all. I'm just kind of giving you some background information because, of course, I mean, that's not what this video is about, but that's kind of her background. And she wasn't a neo-Darwinist, and I think she clashed with some of them, like Richard Dawkins and Gary Coyne. I know he made at least one or two, maybe more blog posts kind of ridiculing her because of this 2011 interview she had with Discover magazine. And if you hear any meowing in the background, it's my cat. He He's a very vocal cat, so I don't know if anyone can hear that, but he's a very chatty cat. He probably sees a bird or something outside. So, but yeah, she clashed with neo-Darwinists, and she's also the ex-wife of Carl Sagan. But yeah, like I said, I know she wasn't creationist and she wasn't supportive of the intelligent design movement. However, I believe that her quote is telling and strikes a blow against the old, tired neo-Darwinian paradigm. Okay. In a 2011 Discover magazine interview titled "Lynn Margulies Says She's Not Controversial, She's Right," she stated, what you like to see is a good case for gradual change from one species to another in the field, in the laboratory, or in the fossil record, and preferably in all three. Darwin's big mystery was why there is no record at all before a specific point, dated to 542 million years ago by modern researchers. And then all of a sudden in the fossil record, you get nearly all the major types of animals. The paleontologists Niles Eldridge and Stephen Jay Gould study lakes in East Africa and on Caribbean islands looking for Darwin's gradual change from one species of trilobite or snail to another. What they found was lots of back and forth variation in the population, and then whoop, a whole new species. There's no gradualism in the fossil record. So that's well, I'd encourage you to read the whole interview for that, the whole interview, because she has several interesting quotes. I didn't put the link in there. I probably should have, but basically, it's just Discover magazine. Lynn Margulies says she's not controversial. She's right. That's the title. If you want to read that, she even admits, I believe, that the ID proponents are right on something. Had to go back, but yeah, if you want to read that, go ahead. It's a really interesting read. So this is a This is only partially relates to stasis, though I do want to include it because of its significance. I didn't want to leave something like this out because I think it's important. It's a good piece of evidence. The so Chinese paleontologist Yunwan Chen, hope I'm saying that right, once interacted with the intelligent design proponent Jonathan Wells. He made some interesting comments. The Bible's description of kinds is reliable and true. We would probably expect to find abrupt appearance, some rapid diversification, and stasis. Kinds would appear, they diversify to an extent, then you have stasis. Interestingly, this paleontologist, he's a Chinese paleontologist, his admissions seem to hint at kinds, limited diversification, and widespread stasis. At the very least, these findings aren't what we'd expect to find if the neo-Darwinian paradigm was true. In the next slide, I'll provide a screenshot from the evolutionnews.org article titled "In China, We Can Criticize Darwin Prelude." It was written by the biologist Jonathan Wells. I'm not going to read all of that, but it's there, if you want to read it. It's on evolutionnews.org. Basically, I am going to read the bottom, though. Let's see. Chen described, last paragraph, described many of the Qian-Yang fossils and argued that their abrupt appearance in the early Cambrian was a problem for Darwinian evolution. Darwin's theory predicts that minor taxonomic differences, such as species and genera, gradually evolve into larger differences, such as classes and phyla, whereas the fossils show that the phyla in many classes appeared first and then diversified into a variety of genera and species. Chen called this top-down evolution to contrast it with the bottom-up evolution required by Darwin's theory. And I think that's an interesting insight. It doesn't completely relate to the stasis. It does partially, but I wanted to include that. But yeah, the article is on evolutionnews.org. I think if you want to look at that, be another good read. But I just thought that would be something good to bring up as it relates to kinds. Making sure I'm not muted here. So how common is stasis? The short answer, very common. In a 2015 Evolution News article titled "Stasis, Life Goes On, but Evolution Does Not Happen," Author Denise O'Leary compiles a list of the fossil record's many examples of stasis. The list is long and it may surprise you. The next few slides are going to feature screenshots from the article with some great examples and interesting quotes. I encourage you to view the article. It's very interesting and informative. So, here's the first part. Let's see. I'm not going to read all of this either, but the second quotation, nature seems to not like orderly schedules much. Evolutionary biologist Donald Prothero admits in four of the biggest climatic vegetational events of the last 50 million years, the mammals and birds show no noticeable change in response to changing climates. No matter how many presentations I give where I show these data, no one, including myself, has a good explanation yet for such widespread stasis despite the obvious selective pressures of changing climate. I'm going to get more on that later about the selective pressures and the strange lack of evolution. Because I'll get to that. But also, it says the first major discovery was that stasis was much more prevalent in the fossil record than had been previously supposed. Many paleontologists came forward and pointed out that the geological literature was one vast monument to stasis, with relatively very few cases where anyone had observed gradual evolution. And this kind of relates to what I'm saying, is that you never really see evolutionists bring this up. Stasis is more of the rule than the exception, but you never really see them bring this up or hear them bring this up, which is kind of interesting to me. But yeah, there's a few more quotes there. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's there if you want to read it. And this is a list of organisms that have been in stasis. It goes on from, I believe that the author is older creationist, but the information is still good because it's describing different levels of stasis from more recent to the more ancient. Like it starts with 37 million years ago, asymmetrical whale skulls found. They were formerly thought to be a much more recent adaptation for echolocation. And then it just goes on. I guess several more slides going over how many examples. I'm not going to go over all of them, of course, but another one, crickets. Notice that, shown no significant changes since apparently 100 million years ago. Then let's see, the harvestmen. There's a few mistakes in this article. This one says the harvestmen spiders, but they're actually not spiders. They're another type of arachnid. They're right. It says 300 million years. They're actually, apparently they've been in stasis and they've been in the fossil record for about 410 million years if you go under an older scenario. So that's a few mistakes right there. Because of course, like I said in my last video, I really like harvestmen. They're a good example of creation, evidence for creation and stasis and lack of evolution. Another big one is horseshoe crabs. They're almost completely unchanged from then to today, for about 450 million years. We went to the beach about 6 years ago. We were in like a little bay area, and they were swimming around us, and they're really interesting animals. But yeah, they're not. They've basically been in stasis, if you go by the older scenario, for extremely long period of time. But yeah, 515 million years ago, the eyes of sea-dwelling predators are highly sophisticated, rivaling the most acute compound eyes. The StreamYard thing is blocking some of my view, but oh well. You go to the last slide. You have worm tracks found 555 million years ago, allegedly. I am a younger creationist, but this is still examples of stasis. Jellyfish that use a light display apparently were alive 600 million years ago. And it goes all the way to 3.3 billion years ago, where beach-dwelling microbes were found that were believe she's talking about the stromatolites, that there's still stromatolites today. Those bacteria are largely the same as their ancient ancestors. But yeah, that's the last of the list. I had to separate into 3 different screenshots to cover all of it. So, in conclusion, widespread stasis is exactly what we'd expect to see if macroevolution didn't occur and the organisms only diversified within kinds. Evolutionists will probably respond to my video with statements such as, "Oh, they didn't need to evolve because they were perfectly suited for their niche and environment." I've asked some evolutionists those questions, and I believe I asked Marshall that question in the Q&A when he debated SFT a few days ago. He was basically, I didn't really think his answer was adequate. It was just kind of a rescue device. He was just saying, they didn't really need to evolve. But my point is, and this kind of relates to what I was talking about earlier, is if some organisms have been in stasis for hundreds of millions of years, their stable environments would not last that long. They would have been repeatedly upended, maybe countless times, with all the disasters they say would have happened, which should necessitate evolution. Because you have some organisms that don't change at all, despite all these natural disasters happening. But then you have some that supposedly change significantly, and to me, it just doesn't seem consistent. It doesn't seem very believable. I don't see why, if evolution was possible, that it wouldn't have happened more. Because, like I said, the stable environments would not last this long. So I don't really think they have a really solid answer for this. I think they're just kind of just guessing. But since no evolution has occurred, it's safe to say that macroevolution doesn't happen. But yeah, of course they're going to try to come up with some kind of rescue device, which is expected. That's what they do. They're always coming up with some kind of rescue device, some kind of explanation, but they're unfounded explanations. They're not supported by evidence. They're just saying, well, I guess this is what happened. That's basically what they're saying, even though they won't admit it. So that was the conclusion of the presentation. I didn't want to make this a whole really long video, but I wanted to provide some quotes and some screenshots and some evidence to strengthen my case. I think this is a fun topic to discuss. I think stasis is a big problem for evolution because, like I said, there's not a lot of consistency in that regard, because you have some animals that change supposedly significantly, and then you have some that, even despite numerous disasters, they just, especially, like, take for example harvestmen. They're very delicate organisms. They don't fossilize well because of how their bodies are. So you don't have, the fossils for them are rare, and a lot of them are in amber, the ones that they do have. But as delicate as they are, and considering all of the stuff that would have happened over that time, I just don't really know why evolution wouldn't have happened more for them, or they wouldn't have evolved more significantly. They didn't evolve at all. You only see the minor variation, but I don't buy it. I don't think it's supported by evidence. It just seems like kinds, an organism will not evolve out of its kind, and that seems to be what that's hinting at. It doesn't seem to be that, oh, well, they just didn't need to evolve, because at some point, yeah, they probably would have needed to evolve to an extent, but I guess that didn't happen, obviously. So, yeah, I don't really buy these just so stories that they come up with, because they're just not verifiable. It's just unfounded stuff. They just try to come up with and expect people to believe it. And that's one of the several just so stories, that you have when it comes to evolution, and also to another extent evolutionary psychology. But yeah, Let's see. Okay, I've stopped. Oh, okay. I see someone's in the chat. Sorry about that. If I didn't respond to you, I didn't have it where I could see the chat. So, but hey, everybody that's watching. But yeah, I mean that was the end of that. It wasn't intending on it being a really big, huge, huge video or anything. But I thought it was be fun to discuss. But I am fairly confident that my next video is going to discuss. It's not going to really deal with evolution too much, but it will deal more with atheism, be more of a critique of atheism. Uh, so it'll probably be titled "My Thoughts on Atheism" because I have critiqued it before, but it's mostly been in writing on my Facebook group. So that'll be fun. But yeah, hopefully I'll have that video up within a week or so, maybe less. It depends on what's going on. But yeah, it's been fun doing this video. I enjoy interacting with everybody, and it's fun to put all these slideshows together and all that. But yeah, well, I guess that's it for today. Thanks for watching, everybody. God bless.